Hello, everyone. I'm Rima Qureshi, Chief Strategy Officer at Verizon. Welcome to a very special edition of Next 20, Verizon's new series of conversations about the issues that will define the next 20 years, featuring emerging and established change makers to explore the inspiration behind their activism and their ideas to build a better future. This week marks the 57th anniversary of the inaugural March on Washington on August 28, 1963. It is famous for being the site of Dr. Martin Luther King's historic I Have a Dream speech. And with us today is the man who helped write Dr. King's famous speech, Dr. Clarence Jones, who is now the director and co-founder of the University of San Francisco's Institute of Nonviolence and Social Justice. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. This is a great opportunity. First of all, let me just, I want everybody to sort of have a level playing field of information. I'm the only child of domestic household servants. When I was born in 1931, my parents did not have a house of their own. So I lived in the servants' quarters of the people they worked for. And at the age of 6, my mother, a very religious person, decided that she wanted to have something presumably better for me. And so she put me in a boarding school that was run by an order of Catholic nuns. But when I went to college, Columbia University, among some of the professors I had a profound influence on me, although I didn't go into the subjects that they taught, was Linus Pauling, who was a Nobel Prize winner professor in chemistry, and Polycarp Kush was a Nobel Prize winner in physics. I was uncertain as to what direction I wanted to go in my first and second year at Columbia, but I only mention them because one of the profound impact they had on me was I developed a great respect for facts and information. Later in my life, particularly when I moved to the West Coast 15 years ago, I began to hear something that I had never heard before, something called alternative facts. So you might say, well, what does that have to do with it? Well, it has to do with something because it's about our country. It's about who we are and how we got there. Those of us today who are trying to understand and deal with this 57 years after the March on Washington, and so forth, we have to ground ourselves. We have to ground ourselves that the nation is still hobbled by this absence of information about fundamentally who we are and how we got to be who we are. So that's why I say, as we consider what we're going to talk about today, understand that you're talking about someone, me, that does not accept the concept of alternative facts with respect to how America got to be a country it is today with respect to racism. There is no alternative fact to slavery and the institution and the legacy of one. There was no alternative fact.
My father is also a professor and a university professor until he retired. I have been brought up about the importance of books, the importance of learning, the importance of facts. So I'm completely there with you. I honestly don't understand why things are happening the way they are, other than it serves somebody's purpose to present the facts as they believe they want them to be because of whatever end objective that they have. It is scary, and unfortunately, some of the technology that is being developed is enabling this, that everybody can kind of remain within their own bubble and create these alternative facts. But hopefully what we are going to be having as a discussion is the opportunity for everybody to know what the reality is. And in that context, I do have to ask one question, if you would allow me.
Any question you wish, ma'am.
What went into the preparation of that historic speech?
The March on Washington was on Wednesday, August 28th. And it's not as if Dr. King had not thought about what he was going to say. He had thought about it. And indeed, on Tuesday evening, the 27th, he was confronted by thinking about it because he was challenged by some of his close advisors who insisted on interrupting his stay at the Willard Hotel, where we were both in Washington, and wanted to offer him some advice as to what they thought he should say. I had done, as I had done on several occasions before, merely to assist him. I had prepared, actually on yellow sheets of paper, I just wrote out several paragraphs that he might consider using as an opening or starting point to his speech, because I know his problems frequently were, how would you start the speech? So I frequently would get him over that hump, and I said, Martin, here's something. I said, you can look at it, use it if you don't want to, but it might be helpful to you, and use it any way you want to. Now, little did I know until the next day when I heard him speak. And I'm listening to it. And I'm thinking to myself, first thing I said, oh, my God, he must have really been tired, because as I listened to him carefully, first 7 paragraphs are exactly as I wrote them. I started the suggested text I thought he might consider is that we have gathered here today 100 years. We've gathered here today at the foot of the great emancipator, 100 years after the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. To see we've come to cash a check and to redeem a promissory note. But the note that we submitted has come back unpaid for insufficient funds. We cannot believe that there are not sufficient funds in the vault of injustice, and so on, so on, so on, so on. It went on. And then he transitioned when I said, we have to deal with the fierce urgency of now. And then he went on and added his, whatever he was going to say. Now, there was a book, those of you who listen, there's a book I wrote called Behind the Dream, The Making of the Speech That Transformed a Nation. And in that book, I talk about the fact that Dr. King is reading from the text that he had written. And then his favorite gospel singer, Mahalia Jackson, shouts at him as he's reading his speech. Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream. And Martin is reading the text. And he looks at her, acknowledges, and he takes the text and moves it to the left side of the lectern. Now, I turn to whoever that human being standing next to me. I don't know, male or female. I don't know what color they were. But I said to whoever that human being was, I said, these people out there don't know it, but they're about ready to go to church. And why did I say that? Because I was standing watching Dr. King from the rear. Okay? He was holding the lectern, he moves the speech to the side. But I've been around him now. Baptist preachers, what they do, those who really preach, is that when they know they're really going to preach, they take their right foot and they start rubbing it up down against their left leg. And when you see that, that's when you know. See, I went to the Juilliard Art School of Music. That's when you know they're going to riff. That's when you know they're going to go off. So now I have heard that Dr. King used this phrase, "I have a dream," at June 21st in Cobalt Hall in Detroit. I didn't have any kind of reaction to that. That's why Mahalia Jackson shouted to him, because she was there. I didn't have any kind of reaction. But it was a setting. 250 to 75,000 people, 25% of whom were white. Now, I want you to understand what I'm going to tell you is the historical fact. Until that date, August 28, 1963, there had been no assemblage of people who would come together at one place at the same time, same spot. Nobody. No 250, 75,000 people. It had never occurred. It was the most extraordinary thing. So somebody asked me, so those of you who are younger, and have this technology, so I was in teaching class, so Professor Jones, if you had a laptop and iPhones and so forth, how many people do you think it would come? I just said 5 million. We didn't have anything. We didn't have cell phone, we didn't have anything. We only had the black phone and the payphone.
What seems to stand out is there are certain things that you remember, and it provides insight that we can't obviously see. There's experiences and the perspective that you had standing behind him. So you were able to see the 270,000 people in front of you, and you also see him rubbing one leg against the other. Are those the things that you remember the most from that moment?
Yes, quite frankly. And the other thing I remember is that the AP or I don't know, one of the news agencies came up to me because they knew I was Dr. King's lawyer. And they tapped me on the shoulder and they said, Attorney Jones, we just got word over the wire services that Dr. W.E. Du Bois, at the age of 90, has died in Ghana. And perhaps you think they should. Oh, I said, oh, yes. So I took a March program. I didn't have anything. I took a pen March program. And I wrote a program. I wrote a note to it. And I just asked it to, pass it forward till Dr. King got it. He got it, turned around, looked at me, opened it up, and he passed the note to A. Philip Randolph. And I remember A. Philip Randolph saying in his sonorous voice, we just got word that the great civil rights, this is a paraphrase, I don't know the exact word, great paraphrase civil rights scholar, Dr. W. Du Bois has just died in Ghana. It was a gasp from that, all those people you could hear. Because to many of them, not all of them, but to many of them, they knew that name. That's one of the things I remember. And of course, I remember earlier. I remember young Bob Dylan singing, what do you call it? Saying something about his great song, Peter, Paul, and Mary. Remember them saying Odetta? I remember that. And of course, I remember. Oh God! And I remember Harry Belafonte, whom I still, was like extended family. He had arranged to bring the Hollywood celebrity delegation to the March on Washington, and wanted to be sure that I was available. So at a certain time, we didn't have any cell phones then. Certain times, I had to go meet this delegation of celebrities coming in from Hollywood in a private plane. And what I remember, the delegation was led by Charlton Heston.
Wow.
Okay. And it included movie stars like Sidney Poitier, Marlon Brando, Anthony Franciosa, Sammy Davis Jr., and of course Charlton Heston. So Charlton Heston says, well, Lotto, can we do this? So he put his hand on my shoulder, as I'm leading them to their seat to sit. Because Harry, being a master performer, he knew that if they sat in a certain part of the stands of television coverage, CBS television canceled all of their programming for that day, all of it. And you wouldn't think about it. A network canceling all of its programming.
It's not like today where, you can do that. Right. It's to your point. How do you get 270,000 people together when there's no cell phones? There's no way to get people together. So you've been on the front lines of the civil rights movement. Anything that you would change in what you have done or how the movement has evolved?
Dr. King was brilliant. He and we knew that no way, quote, Negroes, 12% of the population. There's no way that 12% of the population was going to impose its will on 88% of the population. It wasn't going to happen. So what we had to do was we had to convince a significant segment of the 88% of the population that it was in their self-interest that this end of racial segregation end.
So you were making a very strong point, and I completely agree with you on the alternative facts and how that is so surprising that the term can even exist. But are there other things that surprise you in how the world has evolved since the 1960s? What has changed and what hasn't really changed?
Well, what has really hit me is the advent of this extraordinary technology, information technology. And so I see that Elon Musk can put a rocket ship and send it up. We can have a rover that can go to Mars. We can do all of this. So if you can put a land rover on Mars and you can send a rocket ship to connect with a space capsule, tell me what prevents your technology from addressing the homeless people in Silicon Valley. Tell me, what is so, if you can do this, if you have the technology to do this, well, this ought to be a piece of cake. Okay? I mean, listen to me. I'm not even talking on moral grounds. I'm talking on pragmatic grounds.
Right.
Tell me, what is it? What is the disconnect?
One question, even though we are, of course, very committed to this and we are very serious about, making sure that there is racial justice, what advice would you give to Verizon and other companies on what else you would like the business community to be doing?
Collectively, you are the best and the brightest. I know little about the individual journeys that brought you where you are. But the fact is, where you are today, you are at a company in the communications industry that has the capacity to influence millions of people. Okay? Millions of people. So it seems that Verizon ought to sit down and say, you know what? Yeah, we are the best and the brightest. We really understand the creation and the communication of information as good as anybody else. What can we do with the information and technology that we have that can make that can make America be what it was intended to be? If you, on the cutting edge of technology, if you cannot figure out a way of how we're going to communicate the essence of getting rid of this shackles of the legacy of slavery. If you can't do it, then who can? Okay? Because you're the best.
Some people feel that the problem may be too much for individuals to solve. What do you say to those that wonder about what they can contribute? Is every individual important?
It cannot, no individual can solve it. You people in the communication business have solved extraordinary problems. Okay? So I want to say to you, I don't know about Apple. I don't know about other people. Okay? But I know the technology and capability of Verizon. And they can keep a cranky customer out late than me for 32 years. I know you can find a way of coming up, of creative ways of dealing with the legacy of slavery. You have the will, and guess what? You have the knowledge at your fingertips. You just may not know how to do it. But I'm telling you, you don't have to, you have it.
Part of this series is our desire to bring emerging activists and experienced changemakers together. And I think in that context, I'd love, Kayla, for you to jump in and ask a few questions. Kayla is a network engineer at Verizon and an active member and leader in our BOLD employee resource group. BOLD stands for Black Originators, Leaders, and Doers. Kayla embodies that mindset both in her words and actions through and through. Kayla, welcome, please. I'm sure you have lots to ask as well.
No, I'm already intimidated when a young person, a young woman is introduced as being a network engineer.
I'm just happy.
I'm saying,
right.
Oh my God, Clarence, you better shut your mouth.
No, not at all. I am ridiculously humbled to have this conversation with you, Dr. Jones. Wikipedia told me that your birthday is January 8th. And if that's true, then that means we share a birthday, which I think is amazing. So, yeah, I'm super excited. See, so we're already friends. I'm also going to probably submit my application for adoption because I hear that you adopt young people here and there. So I will be submitting that application.
On January 8th, I'll be 90. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be dancing all day.
I'm here for it.
Okay.
I will be dancing with you on January 8th. Okay. So again, I'm humbled to be here with you today. I want to talk about, again, that next 20, right? And really start to explore what it means to be someone of the next generation, kind of putting this movement into motion and continuing it on. My first question is around technology as well. It's really a question about, what value are we getting from sharing as much as we do now that we have these tools in our hands, right? When it comes to reporting, everybody's a reporter now because we're all taping instances, a random person filmed George Floyd's death, murder, right? And so I think for us, I wonder sometimes, is it doing more harm than good when we share those things over and over and over again? Does it almost kind of water down what's happening? And I think about Emmett Till and, my family's from Mississippi, and that open casket photo and that really sparked a lot of movement within this, civil rights struggle. But are we doing it too much? Are we filming too much? Are we sharing too much? Where, it's taking a toll on us, or do we need to keep sharing? I really want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, let me just say something to you as a representative part of the so-called younger generation. I bow to you and speak to you in your generation with profound love and respect, because what you have done is you have touched the moral soul of America. And quite frankly, you have done it with tools that we didn't have. Okay? All right? So that, look, it's called, quote, the Black Lives Matter movement. But the fact of the matter is, the Black lives are a small component of it. Okay? As blacks are, we're a small component in the conversation. So what you have achieved is what we recognize. When I said we recognize, no matter how much power we had, we're only 12% of the population. You have enabled to do the dream. You have gotten you've got the majority of non-black people, and that's just not white people, that's brown, Asian people. You've got people, they understand, not because they're black, but because they understand the truth of what you're saying. And so to that extent, those are my generation. We bow with respect. Now, I say to some people, I say to my good friends, Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, I say, you need to keep your mouth shut. Don't be coming. No, I'm telling you the truth. Don't be coming lecturing and talking down to these people. I mean, yeah, we did what we had to do, but you need to go and speak to them humbly. I speak to you humbly in admiration because, see, I know that you're standing on the shoulders of Martin Luther King Jr., Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, John Lewis, C.T. Vivian, Jose Williams. I know that. Okay? And so you, with this unique ability to use communication technology, you've done something that we didn't have the capacity to do. So you've been able to touch a wide variety of people who are not black to bring them to the central thing about what kind of country are we? You've touched the soul of America. So for that, it's the most extraordinary achievement I never expected to see. I look at your generation with such love and profound respect. Okay, I collectively, my colleagues know I have a way of just embracing people that I love. I says, yeah, you are my grandchildren, you are my godchildren. Okay, whether you want me or not, okay? Whether you want me or not, you have become my godchildren because I love and respect you so much for what you have done. Martin Luther King Jr. weeps every day with joy. Every day he weeps with joy when he looks at the magnitude of that. He sees because he knows. Remember what he said? Remember what he said on April 3rd? I've been to the mountaintop and I looked over and I may not get there with you, but I've looked over the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. I can tell you authentically what he would say, what he would do. He would weep in joy and admiration of what you had achieved.
Thank you. I will definitely share that with so many others, so many others. And I know, I'm not giving you any new news when I say that, we have to continue, right? We know we have to continue. And I think right now we're wondering, what are those ways forward as we continue to try to think about how to bring equality, right, to our country. And so when it comes to keeping the momentum going, what does that look like? What do you think that can look like? And even as I think about it, Dr. King was the leading voice. We don't have that leading voice. So do we need that leading voice? Yeah.
Looks like revisiting and restudying the dynamics of something called power. Power. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what is power in our country? Okay? Power, political power, is voting. Voting. You don't have to proselytize who a person should vote for. I'm not suggesting that. They can vote for whoever they want. Okay? But you need to have this groundswell of communication. This is the sense. You want to have your voice heard, you have to vote. I've known people who walked 5, 7 miles each way. 7 miles there, 7 miles back. What to do? To vote. And then they get there and they're hit with a billy club. And then they come back and come back and come back. Okay? So maybe the challenge is, how do you marry this sophisticated knowledge of communication and technology that you have to know that at the end of the day, you have to motivate people to vote?
No, I completely agree with you there, for sure. I think that is one of the things that this generation and generations even after me are really realizing, the power of our voice, and that if we don't vote, then we are literally losing our voice. So we're giving up our voice. So thank you for that as well. So another thing I want to kind of get your advice and your perspective on is our white allies, right? Or really any people of color. This is diversity taking to the streets, and really joining us, as you mentioned earlier. What does it look like to continue to hold our allies accountable? I don't know if you know, but many books were, sold out, books that had to do with race and racism in this country, right? Many of our allies said that, let's get educated first. What's that next step after that? How do we make sure to hold them accountable and keep that momentum as well going with those that we know we need? As you mentioned, we're not as Black people, we are not the majority. And so we need their help. We need their, allyship. So what would your advice be there of keeping them accountable to continue this work with us?
I never forget the power of love. Mm-hmm. And I never forget the power of patience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you really care about somebody, I'm not talking about romantically caring about somebody, but if you really care about somebody who's a friend of yours and you know that they have the capacity to be better than they are, or they and their friends better than they are, then your power of love for them is that you can say, I'm not gonna let you go. I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to help you understand what I'm doing. I'm not going to preach at you. I'm just going to let you know what the magnitude of this Black experience based on the legacy of slavery is. Because you are convinced that they're so smart. See, one of it they don't know. You understand? You're convinced that once they know the information that has not been taught to them in school, once they know and see the same things that you know, did you know the nature in their soul that they'll say, oh, yes, because they're decent people. I believe that. The great French novelist Victor Hugo says, more powerful than the march of mighty armies is an idea whose time has come. Ending racism in this country is an idea whose time has come. Okay? You don't need to send a land rover to Mars to find out whether it can be done. We can do it. And anybody who's a network engineer ought to be able to do anything. I like that title.
Thank you.
I'm going to add that title. Network engineer.
It's all on you, Kayla. It's all on you.
I know, right? I'm like, pressure. I'm going to definitely pass the message on. All of you next 20, people out there, make sure you're taking notes. But no, I really appreciate that charge because I think we need that as well. And I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about the protests, right? There are a lot of people that, again, took to the streets in the name of this Black Lives Matter movement. And I'm just wondering what you would say to people who think perhaps that protesting is ineffective, that it doesn't change anything, because that's still somewhat of a popular belief amongst others. And so just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Frederick Douglass said years ago, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. Protest is bringing to the attention of people outside yourselves an injustice. And now, with the most sophisticated form of communication, your challenge is, without beating somebody over the head, how do you get them to see that what you are protesting against at the end of the day is in their self-interest, is in their self-interest? See, you don't want to make a non-black person, a white person, your enemy.
Right.
You want to make them your friend. You want them as best as you can. You have to say to yourself, well, there's maybe something I'm not doing. I love my friend so much. He or she's so smart. Okay? So maybe there's something that I'm not doing effectively. Because if I was doing it more effectively, they would understand. We have to look at it. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm gonna I'm a disciple of Martin Luther King Jr. I do believe that there's a deep reservoir of goodness among us. Now there's some mean, people. There's some stone cold racist killers. I understand that. But the average person, even the average person who may not understand, who may not agree with us at first, even the average person whose history and mind is infected by the disease of white supremacy, they're not a bad person. Okay? Just because you were brought up and didn't understand doesn't make you a bad person. It means you're a person that needs to be educated. You need to see what's crippling your ability to be a better person. Now, the other thing on a personal basis, I want you to tell your young friends, don't let me die. Don't let me die in 91, 92, 90. Don't let me die and not see what I know you have the capacity to do.
I want to close with my last question, and I hope everyone, again, who is watching that is using technology and out protesting is hearing Dr. Jones. What he is saying is keep going, keep demanding, keep protesting. And so definitely hear that and hear this challenge, that he is giving us. I take it on, I accept. But the last thing I want to talk about is, you've mentioned power multiple times during this talk, and I really want to explore the hope piece of it, right? Because we are living in a time. I remember studying at San Diego State and Africana Studies classes, and we had to read the book Race Matters by Dr. Cornel West, and he talks about nihilism, right? That loss of hope. Literally, no hope.
Hope, right.
And we're living in times that are somewhat can be looked at as hopeless, sometimes. And so I'm just wondering if you could leave us with some words, right, to this next generation of not only the charge and the challenge to do and continue to do this work, but, something that will kind of invigorate us to keep hoping, despite what we're seeing or despite failing.
Was an
really
African proverb.
Yeah.
Says it all. If the surviving lions don't tell their stories, the hunters will get all the credit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay? You are lucky to be a surviving lion. And if we don't tell our stories of the fight against injustice, the hunters will get all the credit.
I got it. Thank you. I so appreciate everything. All of your words of definitely just soaking it all in.
Thank you so much.
I'll kick it back to you, Rima.
Thank you, Kayla. So, Dr. Jones, I'd like to close with a bit of an idealistic question, maybe build on Kayla's question of hope. So next 20 is about the issues that will define the next 20 years. Where do you see racial justice in 20 years? Will we finally achieve the equality that you and Dr. King marched for all those years ago?
If we don't, we won't have a country that's governable. If we do not, that's the challenge. What's the choice? Because that's the direction we're going in. Okay? If you don't do this, it's all gonna, everything we have worked so hard to achieve is going to be at risk. You have been blessed to be in a company on the cutting edge of the capacity to do this. I mean, my God, man, if you just doubt, just let one of your network engineers go and talk to them.
Any particular one? Somebody named maybe?
In a short period of time, yes, I'm endeared to one of them, yes.
Got it on my to-do list.
Challenge accepted, I would say.
Okay.
Kayla, what do you think?
Oh, it's definitely challenge accepted.
Yeah. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. Kayla, thank you. We have lots of work to do. Really appreciate everybody joining. Thank you.